You are listening to the Techie Leadership Show with Bogdan and Andrei.
Well, hello and welcome to the Techie Leadership Show. Today with me, I have Dave Farley. He's an independent software developer, consultant, founder, and director of Continuous Delivery. Hi, Dave. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Same here. Managing with all the pandemic and everything, but it's going quite well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My career was spent largely as a software developer, but also kind of as a technical leader, leading software development teams and organizations. I'm probably best known for being one of the authors of the book Continuous Delivery, and also a thing called the Reactive Manifesto. I was involved in I was the head of engineering for a team that built the world's highest performance financial exchange, and applying kind of engineering disciplines in that sort of context. So a little bit of experience of sort of technical leadership.
You say a little bit.
I also once had a funny job title. My job title was Director of Innovation at ThoughtWorks.
Oh, Director of Innovation. And what did you do as a Director of Innovation?
I told other people to be smart.
I told other people to be smart. Oh, that's a nice job to have. Actually, this reminds me like of a story, an old story, like business, like a US businessman went to Japan, and while on tour over the factory, showed them everything and all the people working, and then they went like to at the end of a hallway there was like a small office, and they enter inside and they say like, here inside we have the highest paid employee in the whole company. He makes even more than me as the CEO. And the American businessman like, what does he do? What's happening there? And the guy says, this guy, his job is to come up with ideas. That's all he does. His last idea doubled our business. So we spare no investment in this guy just to have him come up with one good idea a year. It's enough for us.
Sadly, there are a few organizations that work out their payroll that way.
Yeah. It is really sad.
Yeah.
But enough with my stories. Here the point is to get your stories. What story would you like to start? Do you want to start like with the leadership success story or the leadership failure?
I'm perfectly happy to go through the questions in the order that you kind of presented them to me initially.
Okay. So what would be the biggest leadership success story that you've witnessed yourself personally?
I struggled over this one because I've seen a few success stories and in different contexts.
Okay.
The one that's had the most profound impact on my thinking and my career, though, was my story. I was involved in the leadership of this, so it's a little bit self-serving. But I was working at ThoughtWorks had a great job, and then I was kind of pulled away by a friend to work in this startup to build one of the world's highest performance financial exchanges at a company called LMAX. And we did some seriously innovative things. LMAX is still going. So this is 13, 14 years later. LMAX is still going, still employing people, still making. So it was a successful startup on those terms, very successful. We did some innovative things in terms of the technology. But the thing that I'm proudest of, I think, was the culture. We established a fantastic development culture. We solved hard problems, and we helped people develop their careers. One of my ambitions as a leader in the organization that I always told people was that I wanted LMAX to be one of those career-defining employments. I wanted it to be the place that they would think back on through their career and thought, that kind of set the scene for my career. And I think for many of us it did. I think for many of us it was that kind of place. The things that it took were all sorts of interesting things. So there was some technical excellence. So we were practicing continuous delivery with some degree of rigor. We were very, very good at continuous delivery, automated testing, deployment automation, all of those sorts of things. But also the softer side, the cultural side. We built a fantastic team, and many of the people that I worked with there are still friends that I communicate with regularly, sort of years later, as a result of that. And so it was kind of leadership with a soft touch. The aim really was to help people flourish. It was to help get the best out of those people, and that's informed my leadership style ever since. In that is to my job as a leader. I'm getting off into the territory of other questions there, but my job as a leader isn't to have all the answers, but it's to help encourage and coach the best performance out of other people.
Yeah, that's mostly the job of a leader.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No problem. So that's, from my point of view, that's the main job of a leader, is to help other people grow and get stuff done with their help and through them. And you said like you put a lot of work in shaping the culture.
Yeah.
Can you say like what was the most successful thing you did to create a really awesome culture inside the company?
Again, this gets onto some of the other stuff that I want to talk about, but I think that the most important thing that we managed to establish as a leadership team, as a group of people, setting up this organisation, was a culture of experimentation. We assumed, our job was to kind of, to hire smart people and allow smart people to do smart things. And we encouraged very strongly the philosophy that none of us knew the right answers, and probably any answers that we came up with would be wrong. And so our job was to figure out through experimentation which were the good answers and which were the bad answers. And so we built up an ability as an organization to move extremely quickly and try out new ideas and refine them all the time. And that kind of pervaded the business. That was not just at the technical level, but at the organization and cultural, the business level too. We could pivot quite quickly. I remember one story. We were coming up to 3 weeks away from our initial launch of our first product, which was kind of a trading system for a simple kind of financial instruments.
Okay.
And the business came and said, "We've had a great idea. It'll be much more, instead of this boring trading application that we've been building for the last 6 months, it'd be really cool if we kind of did a sort of more gamey sort of thing. We could click on a graph." And we'd been building all of this stuff. We had automated testing, and stuff all around all this stuff. We go, okay. But fortunately, the way that we built it allowed us to make that change. So from a technical point of view, we get good enough modularity, separation of concerns, all those good things that we could kind of change it without breaking the world. From a testing point of view, we got the right kind of testing that was decoupled from the application, so the tests would remain valid even though the user interface changed. And from a business point of view, we could think about those things, fast enough and quickly enough to kind of pivot and switch. And within 3 weeks, we hit our delivery schedules and went live with the kind of trading game kind of thing instead of the trading thing. So that was quite, that was a revelatory experience that if you get this kind of stuff right, the speed with which you can move, and if you take advantage of good engineering, but this idea, this kind of I think of it as kind of the scientific skeptical mind applied to business and technology.
Yeah. Well, from my experience also, if you get like good people, and all you have to do is point them in the right direction, yes, and just let them do the work. If you try to define how they should do it and all this stuff, it just slows them down, and
Yes.
you get an inferior product at the end. You cannot pivot or enhance it on the spur of the moment. And then you have all this battleground that you have between management and technical people. And it's usually I find it's because that managers want to micromanage too much technical people, and the technical people they say, look, just confirm for me that I got the gist, the right direction for it, what you want to do, and let me do it.
Yes. Yes, I think that's absolutely right. There's a great quote which I can't find right now to read it out properly, but from Harvard Business Review a little while ago, it said it was talking about agile development and continuous delivery and DevOps and those sorts of techniques. But it said the biggest impediment to these things is not whether they're the right things. It's not whether they work. It's not whether they scale up. We know the answer to all of those, and it's yes, they are.
Yes.
That's the right way of working. The biggest impediment is leadership. It's management in organisations being too conservative about the way that they operate.
Yeah.
So
and
I think you're right.
And taking new ideas and trying to make them old.
Yes. Yeah.
And with that in mind, what would be like a leadership fail that you've witnessed that you know about?
So earlier in my career, it's a little while ago now, but I was working for a company in America, which I won't name. I was working for a company, and we were doing an integration project across a suite of products to join these together. This was a company that was doing very well in their sector, but didn't have a good kind of. They were selling into their market segment and doing very well. They had a significant market share, but their systems weren't glued together. They kind of grown through acquisition, and they got a number of disparate products, and they were trying to bring them together into some more kind of enterprise scale system that could do more together. And I was involved in that project, and we were making progress step by step. We'd just done an acquisition for a company that did some kind of integration sort of style software products that would glue things together. And the senior leadership in the organization decided that we weren't going quickly enough. And so they did a deal with one of the big consultancies, and they said, okay, on Monday there are going to be 200 people turning up to help you with this project.
No.
Yes. So this, they told us this, I think it was on the Thursday. So we had 2 days 4 days over the weekend as well to prepare for 200 people turning up. And then we got to try and organise to do those things. 18 months later, we had 200 people working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks.
Oh my God!
The software didn't even all compile. It wouldn't even, it didn't work together. There's no idea of trying these things out and making. So that was a huge failure, to my mind, of leadership, of being impatient and doing completely the wrong thing. One of the realizations, one of the insights that I believe that I've gained since then is, I think it's a mistake. I think that failure was based on a mistake of misunderstanding what software development really is. And I'm writing a book at the moment, so I'm writing a book about software engineering, but in the context of continuous delivery and other things, to understand how this stuff really works. And I've come to the conclusion that our industry's made a profound mistake in our history of thinking in terms of production problems. So if you make something, if you make a pen or a car or something physical, then the design is certainly a tricky part of the problem, but the really hard part of the problem is scaling up the production of that so you can manufacture it at scale to a price. That's not a problem that we ever have in software, because as soon as you've created the software once, you can perfectly clone it instantly, essentially for free. So we don't have a production problem ever. Our problem is always a problem of design. It's a problem of exploration and learning. And so we should be optimizing to be really fantastic at exploration, discovery, learning, and that takes techniques like feedback and experimentation and working incrementally and all of those sorts of things. Not trying to productionize things by throwing 200 people at projects to speed it up. And I these days I make my living working as a consultant, and one of the commonest failures that I see in larger organizations is them driving to maximize the capacity of their teams to deliver features instead of driving the teams to be best at learning. If you focus on learning rather than on feature delivery, you get much, much better outcomes, including better feature delivery. But primarily our discipline is one of learning, and we don't think about that enough, I think.
Well, that reminds me of the saying, if you want something to get done quickly, give it to a busy person.
Yes.
And somehow it applies, especially in creative industries, so not just software developer. It doesn't work like the old mentality, throw more bodies at the problem. Usually it works better if you take some people out of the project, because the remaining people, they realize we're fewer, we have to get this done, we have to be smarter about it. They're going to read something, they're going to search on the internet, they're going to talk more with their colleagues, they're going to collaborate more to find a solution that is elegant in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And management usually doesn't understand this is not a farm. I understand if you're on a farm and you need to pick the cherries or you need to pick the wheat, 200 extra people, it's a great idea. You get to do the work faster. They can work in parallel. You have all the optimizations of having more people in that when you have that problem. But when you're working with technology, especially creating it, it fails. And I see this happening over and over at companies. The idea is we need an extra person. We have 10 developers now. If you put 20, they're going to be twice as fast. And usually they're going to be twice as slow.
I came across, I use it in my consultancy, I came across a beautiful little bit of research that on team sizes. And there was an analysis of, I think it was nearly 6,000 projects looking just at team size. And they divided the cohorts up into teams of 5 people and teams of 20 people. And then they just counted lines of code, because it's a dumb metric. It's quantitative. So they counted how long would it take a team to get to 100,000 lines of code. And on average, across all of the teams, it took 9 months to get to 100,000 lines of code. For a team of 5 people, on average, they were slower than a team of 20 people. But they were slower over a period of 9 months by a week.
Just one week.
A team of 5 people is nearly 4 times as productive as a team of 20 people. And then they looked at the defect rates, and the defect rates of the teams of 20 people were significantly, dramatically higher than the teams of 5 people. So small teams go faster. They definitely do. And we've known that since the 1970s. Fred Brooks in the Mythical Man Month said, you can't make a baby in a month with 9 women.
Well, if it only was possible. Okay. So Dave, what would be your leadership philosophy after all your experience and everything you saw?
So we've touched on it a little bit already. I think the first thing I once had a career review, and I was working for a consultancy at the time, and my career review was, Dave's shown that he can be effective with teams of great people, but how could he cope with teams of worse people? And I said, I'm not really interested in finding out. so I think my favourite way of thinking about this is that I'm a sports fan, and my football team, who, like all of the other football teams in the world at the moment, aren't doing anything, is Manchester United.
Oh.
And if you think about leadership in the context of a manager of Manchester United, like Alex Ferguson, the greatest football manager ever, in my opinion. He had a remarkable success, but he was picking the best people that he could find, and he would do whatever it took to get those people into the team, and then he would focus on them and coach them to get the best out of them. Alex Ferguson was a decent football player way back in his career, but that's not what he's famous for, or even what he was best at. He wasn't the best football player ever, but he coached some of the best football players ever, and was able to make them even better. Ronaldo, one of the greatest football players at the moment, says that a lot of his success was off the back of the learning that he got from Alex Ferguson. So part of being a leader, I think, is to help other people to maximize their talents and skills and focus them. So your job is to kind of help others to shine, to grow their ability. The other thing that I'm a profound believer in is, one of my hobbies is reading about science, and in particular.
Okay.
And I without any fear of contradiction, science is humanity's best problem-solving technique. So if you have hard problems in any sphere, applying scientific style thinking is going to get you to a better outcome than not. And so applying that kind of thinking to business, leadership, technology is part of my style. So I'm very strong believer in being experimental and going into ideas. So I think I'm quite creative. I think I'm quite good at being innovative. I'm quite a good software developer. I'm a decent leader. But my starting point is that I assume that all of my ideas are wrong.
Oh.
I don't assume that I'm right all of the time, and I will argue my case. I will make my point. If you and I were disagreeing about some direction to take, I would argue my case as forcefully as I could. But if you came up with better arguments, I'd switch my position and I'd agree with you, and then I'd back you and kind of give you the benefit. My job as a leader isn't to be right all of the time. It's not to have all of the answers. My job is to hire really smart people and let them be really smart, and to allow them to have the answers and to help them do that. Primarily, that's what I think is the goal. What I see a lot of people. I kind of differentiate between leadership and management.
Yes.
Because I think they're different things. I'm probably not very good at management, to be honest, but I think I'm quite good at leadership, and part of the difference is that focus on trying to establish a way forward for an organisation, and not have all of the answers, and go along on the journey of discovery along with everybody else, but help us focus on where it is that we're going and why we're doing those things.
Yeah. Well, when you were saying like there's a difference between a manager and a leader, I think like the biggest difference is, to be a manager you need to have the title. To be a leader you don't need the title. You just are.
Yes.
And there are lots of people that are leaders without titles, and they do awesome jobs for companies, and sometimes the companies doesn't even know the asset they have in that person.
That's definitely true. Yes. That goes back to one of the other things that we were talking about earlier. I have a friend who kind of talks about this quite profoundly. But if you look back on our careers and think about the successful software development teams that we've seen, there's nearly always been at least one person that really was shone as a leader in the sense that you're talking about, that would kind of drive it forward and have the commitment and the sense of direction and all of those things. And they weren't right all of the time, but the power of their personality and their leadership would infect the rest of the team and help them to do more than they thought that they could.
Yeah, you just want to get the project done. You love it, and you put all your energy in it, and it's infectious. And the other people, I said, even other colleagues that aren't on the project are going to say like, "How can we help you? What are you doing there?" It looks like really, really cool, and it creates like a wave of energy inside the whole company, which is really, really nice.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's move like to the rapid fire rounds. What would be like the top 3 leadership tips you have for aspiring leaders?
I struggled to bring it down to 3.
You can give us more, so there's no problem.
So I think the first one, I think the job of leadership is to establish and maintain some kind of vision. When I'm coaching people in terms of technical leadership and stuff for software development projects, one of the scenarios I talk about, I use the Apollo program as an example.
Okay.
Sometimes, and if you think about Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, 1963, standing up in Congress saying, "We're going to send a man to the moon by the end of the decade," and that was leadership.
Bold
leadership, visionary leadership. Kennedy had no clue what it would take to achieve that. Kennedy wasn't an engineer. He didn't know all of the steps to get there. He didn't know what it would take, but he had the vision, and many of the people that were working, that didn't know all the technicalities, hadn't got that vision. So understanding, so planting a flag on a hill somewhere and saying, "Let's go over there. Let's do this amazing thing." I think that's part of leadership. Let's aspire to do something bigger than ourselves. Let's aspire to do something. I think that's part of leadership and kind of generating the interest, the excitement, the enthusiasm in the organisation to move forward in that direction. I think that's part of it if you want to do great things.
For sure.
And that's kind of related to, what's there's Dan Pink stuff about autonomy, mastery and purpose. So, the job of leadership is really to focus on the purpose of an organisation or a team and to try and establish that kind of thing. So thinking in those sorts of terms is useful. The other one is what I've talked about, is think about the kind of, I've heard people refer to it as servant leadership. Your job is to enable other people.
Serve, yes.
I had a great conversation with somebody in a bar at a conference a couple of years ago, and she said it's not servant leadership. She thinks of it more as being the host at a party. Your job is to lay out the nibbles and the drinks and to make sure the meeting and have a conversation and occasionally to throw out the drunks.
Well, that's also important.
Yeah. I think it's quite a nice idea, but this idea of actually your job is to help other people achieve their ambitions and goals, but in line with the vision for the organisation. I think that's, amplify the effectiveness of teams and individuals to deliver on organisational goals is probably one of the key focuses that I think is important to think about. It's not about you being the expert. It's not about you having all of the answers. It's not about you taking all of the credit for these things. It's about your job as a member of a team is to help maximise the effectiveness of the team.
Yes.
And that's... The last one of my 3 is really kind of closely related to my obsession with continuous delivery and that as a driving approach to software engineering. And that is what one of my friends coined the term economies of speed. So if you think about the way that most organizations structure themselves, then they're trying to focus on different things. And a good way of thinking about this is to think about where does the technical function in your organization report to in the senior management. This is an idea of Gregor Hoppe, an ex-ThoughtWorks colleague of mine, and it's a beautiful idea. So if you're in a traditional organization, the kind of development function, the IT function in an organization will probably report to the CFO.
Yes.
And the way that CFOs will kind of, organize to do things is that they'll aim, they'll see it as a
cost.
And so their aim is cost cutting. So the right kind of things to do is to outsource as much of the IT as possible and get it off the books so that they can work forwards. A slightly more advanced way of thinking about this is that maybe the IT function is reporting into the operations manager, the COO or somebody like that. And in there, those sorts of organizations, the way that you're going to try and lever that to make that work is you're going to use economies of scale. You're trying to go big and have lots of teams looking at lots of stuff and all that kind of thing. I think that where you really want to be is that technology is so important that it's a partner. It's driving the business. If you look at Google or Amazon or Netflix, the technology isn't separate to the direction of the business. It is the direction of the business. And I think that's what we would think of these days as kind of digital disruption, those sorts of things. And for those, what you really want economies of speed. You want to be able to move very quickly, learn really fast, and try out lots of ideas. And to do that, you need very, efficient, effective, cohesive organization. Cohesive is perhaps the wrong word, but organizations where you can make decisions quickly and learn from them and move forward.
And to learn, you have to be willing to fail fast and make sure you fail small enough so you survive each failure until you hit it on the head.
So taking speed seriously and all of the things that kind of flow with that, sort of great collaboration, cross-functional teams, continuous delivery, deployment pipelines, test-driven development, test automation, infrastructure as code, all of these things start to make more sense when you think that what we're trying to do is that we're trying to learn really quickly, move really fast so that we can adapt. And you get into this kind of model for economies of speed. And I think that's, for me, that's what drives modern high-performance teams. That the teams that I see that seem to be doing really well all have some flavor of that at their heart.
Yeah, and it's important, like from top down, to be clear. Like if you fail, it's okay. Yes. Because I've seen it. Like I've seen teams going on, trying stuff out, failing, and then getting their heads chopped off by upper management because how could you do this? How is it possible? It's like, look, we tried it. We thought it's going to be a success. It didn't work out. It put us back like a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but we're going, with the knowledge we got, we're actually going to make it better, and it's going to be faster than before.
Absolutely. It's one of the comments that I often get from clients when I start talking about being experimental, and they say, "We can't afford to experiment. Our stuff has to work." And if you're not experimenting, you're not learning. Amazon track the rate of failure of the experiments. They're carrying out thousands of experiments at any given time. They track the rate of failure of their experiments, and if 50% of their experiments aren't failing, they up the level of risk that they're taking. Jeff Bezos says that the scale of risk that you take needs to go up with the scale of your organization.
Yes. And to be honest, like if you're trying to beat Amazon and you want to be safe with it, you're going to build something like Amazon, but it's kind of hard to to beat it by emulating it. You need to come with something different, and then you need like lots of failure, lots of innovation, lots of new ideas. It's not going to be safe, and probably most of the businesses will not see the day of light and enjoy like the revenue from hitting on the right idea.
Sure, but they're certainly not going to win. They're certainly not going to take off. They're certainly not going to take on Amazon in any way if they're not willing to try stuff out and take some risks.
Well, you can die fast and shoot for glory, or you can die slow and shoot for failure, for guaranteed failure.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about Amazon and they started by selling books, what's the number one book that had the most profound impact on you?
So I'll give you the trite answer first, which is
Okay.
continuous delivery. So I was involved in writing a book that's had a profound influence on my career.
It always has. If you write a book, it has a profound.
Because it's changed my career, being involved with that book, and it's been much more successful than I expected. Really, there's been lots of books. I'm an avid reader, and some of them are not to do with software development. A book that has kind of really radically changed the way in which I think about things is a very geeky book about science called The Beginnings of Infinity by David Deutsch, which is talking about the philosophy of science and kind of modern populism. It's a fantastic book.
I have to check it out now.
Sorry?
I have to check it out now.
It's a mind-expanding book. David Deutsch is a theoretical physicist at Oxford, specializing in quantum mechanics, but he's a genius, and it kind of shines through his book. There are times when you have to read it quite slowly because the ideas are so deep.
Great.
But I think in software terms, one of the more influential books, most influential books that I read is probably Extreme Programming by Kent Beck.
Yeah, a classic.
That was a seminal work, in the late 90s when that came out, and I was a relatively earlier. I'd kind of been practicing versions of Extreme Programming without knowing that before the book came out, and so I was a fairly early adopter of Extreme Programming, working on projects using that in the late 90s and early 2000s. And before that, going back a very long time, there are probably few of your audience that will remember this book, was Windows Programming by Charles Petzold, which first introduced me to writing software on Windows in C.
Yeah. And Dave, where can people go to find out more about you?
So there's a few places. So you can go to my blog site, which is davefarley.net. I'll supply you with some links so that hopefully I've recently started a YouTube channel, and I'm trying to release videos weekly that describe some of my thinking on technology and leadership in the context of continuous delivery and software engineering broadly. So you can go there. It's the Continuous Delivery channel on YouTube. Again, I'll provide some links. And my business website is continuous-delivery.co.uk. So if you're interested in talking to me about doing some work, there's some links there too. And finally, Twitter. I'm at DaveFarley77 on Twitter.
Okay. I will provide all the links and people can check out and find out more about you. I want to thank you very much, Dave, for being on the show. It has been a true pleasure. And I, for one, learned a lot about leadership and new viewpoints on it, and the importance of it and technical set. And it's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me too. Thank you very much for asking me.
That was today's episode. Tune in daily. Rate, like, subscribe, and share, please. Oh, you can find further info and materials in the show notes on techyleadership.com, including links to the guest book recommendations.